Hello and welcome to this afternoon's PAC-sponsored virtual safari from the Lowveld of South Africa. Today is very exciting, although it's going to be quite difficult to beat Gareth and Andrew's sighting yesterday. We have Basil on camera, Andrew's in final control, but we have a very special guest with us today, and that is John Roth, who is a geology expert. But before we introduce John properly, we're just trying to have a quick look for the puppies to check on how the bonding's going. Last we heard it was going very, very well. I haven't been personally for a few days, but I know everyone else has been checking. And they might be a bit hard to see today because of the wind. Probably hunkered down under a bush somewhere. And what we want to see is them hunkered down together. You can see we've got some strange weather this evening. There's quite dark and stormy to the south. Don't think it's going to rain, but it is quite chilly. And hello to Becky, Mary, Connie, Jan, Rosemary, Barbara, Brandy, Carol, Betty, Mary. And if I've missed you, I apologize. Just send through your messages in a little bit. There they are. Okay, we should get close to them. I see some puppies. Hello Kurt as well. Kurt says, looking forward to this drive and learning about the local geology. We've moved in next door to Rietspruit a couple of months ago. Okay, there are the puppies. Looks like two girls. And they're likely to be a bit jumpy with this windy weather. But they were all feeding together yesterday. Let's have a look around this corner. So it's always good to check that they're not trying to make an escape before we're ready. Hello pups. They got fed yesterday, so they're not so interested in us as they normally are. We have a bit forward for you, Basil. Alright. There's little bushes everywhere. If we see the male. Normally not far from the girls. Where's he gone? Oh, there he is. You can see one way to spot him. He's got quite a dark face compared to the two females. Obviously a bit bigger. Normally when we drive up here, they're very excited to see us because it's feeding day. As I said, they got fed yesterday. But all looking good. There's no wounds on the females. Hello, Ariana. But today is not about wild dogs. It's about the geology of our magnificent part of the world. So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask John to introduce himself while we head towards some interesting rocky spots of the reserve. So John, take it away.
Hi, it's great to be with you. And the wild dogs have quite a lot to do with the rocks really, because they're standing on the sand and the sand comes from the rocks. So just the very physicality of the place means that the animals and plants get to be in certain kinds of spots. So we're going to dive into that this afternoon. And I love to look at landscapes and the way that they influence things, and then the particular rocks in our landscapes. And we're going to see some curious things this afternoon, and I do encourage you to bring your curiosity with you. I find nature to be an endless source of delight.
Right, so our plan is we're going to head down towards the sun slope, and there's a nice spot where we'll be able to have a look at the mountains. And of course, because we decided to do this today, the weather is making looking at the mountains a little bit more difficult than normal. We're going to find a nice spot with a big view. And remember, pop your questions through. We're really excited to have them. Betty would like to know how long till the dogs are out. Probably another 2 weeks or 3 weeks, just depending. We just want to watch them next feeding to see how they react, and then we will make a judgment call after that. Okay, but it has been a windy day today. It is August. Sorry guys, sorry Jennifer, there was a problem with my mic. I've fixed it. You should be hearing me perfectly now. Okay. Now this is definitely one of the better views on the reserve as we start heading down towards the sun slit. We've got the whole Blider Canyon up in front of us.
So just to speak a little bit about the view that we're going to see, we've got really high mountains to the west of us, and the clouds that we've got today, it's an unusual day here in the Lowveld because often clear skies, but we've got a very cloudy sky, and those clouds bump into the mountains, and as they do, they go up. So here's the mountains, here's the Lowveld where we are. The clouds go up, and as they do, they cool and they drop their moisture. And that means that those mountains are wet and they're slowly decomposing because of that wetness. And there's much more rain up on the mountains, and that rain brings rocks and sand down into the Lowveld from up there. So we're going to find some rocks that have traveled a bit of a distance this afternoon.
Okay, I'm just going to speed up for a second. Hello Linda, welcome. You never know what we're going to find. We're looking for rocks, but we are out in the wild. You never know what might surprise us. The elephants have been giving the guys in camp a hard time for the last 3 nights in a row. They've been feeding around the tents and pushing down trees. But yes, so maybe the elephants will give you guys a break tonight.
Great
There we go. Yeah, we're going to pull across here now. Basil, you can probably go into the head. There we go. So I'm going to hand over to John now, and he's going to give you guys an introduction to the geology and whatnot of the area and possibly even the world.
Well, behind me are these beautiful mountains, and where I'm standing is what we call the Lowveld. And obviously it's much lower than the mountains, and it's made of very different kind of rock. So this sort of basement that the Lowveld is comprised of is primarily granite and a bit of gneiss, or gneiss we call it. And these are very ancient rocks from early in the Earth's history. And this basement has been sitting here for a long time. And those rocks behind me, those big mountains, are sedimentary layers. So here's the basement, sedimentary layers built on top of that basement over a long period of time, and then being cut away by rivers, rain and wind, and the Lowveld, the flatness of it being exposed. So those sedimentary rocks behind me have got layers of sand, they've got layers of sand that's been heated and pressurized. They've got layers of some limestone. They've got layers of rocks that come from a time in Earth's history when iron was coming out of the oceans and settling at the bottom of an ocean. So long ago, we're actually standing where there was an ancient ocean or vast inland sea, incredibly far back in Earth's history. So speaking of Earth's history, I brought the world with me. Hold on, it's a bit heavy. Ha, there we go. So here's the Earth, and the Earth is dynamic. It's plastic, it's soft, and it changes over time. And it's hard to imagine that because we stand in places that don't change much over our lifetimes or even over many lifetimes. But the Earth is old, the Earth is soft in places, it's hard in places, it bulges up a bit, it goes down a bit, it's got wet parts, it's got dry parts. And over the surface of the Earth are plates that move, can you believe it? And we talk about tectonic plates, and people in the last few decades have been figuring this out more and more clearly, that these plates move, they bump into each other, they rub against each other. Those of you living on the San Andreas Fault in California, hopefully those plates won't move too much in the next few thousand years. Some of those plates go underneath each other, and some of them push like this, and where those plates push you get mountains. But in this case, our plate, let's say it's over here, is pretty stable, and it contains the kind of first building blocks of the earliest continent. We call those cratons. You don't have to remember these terms if you don't want to, but let's say this is this craton, this earliest continental building block. All sorts of stuff's happened on that craton over time, and loads of these sediments like the ones behind us. So we're going to look at basement rocks, these granites and gneisses, and some of the unusual rocks that they picked up on their way to where they stopped deep below the earth and cooled down. And we're going to pick up rocks that have come all the way from those mountains behind me, and who knows what else we're going to find. And we might find some interesting plants and animals that are so powerfully connected to the rocks that they can't really live without them.
Okay, well, we're going to head quickly across to an area that we know there's some interesting rocks hiding in, called Uitkyk. And Jennifer, to answer your question, do the elephants ever move rocks? Yes, they do. Sometimes for fun, sometimes to get at minerals and stuff that might be under the rocks. But yes, they can move rocks.
Another thing that moves rocks is baboons, and they're looking for interesting things to eat underneath those rocks. Scorpions are a favorite, but any small animal hiding underneath a rock can be found by a baboon and snapped up quickly.
Get ready to bounce, which is the cameraman's least favorite thing, is when we drive on the rocky roads.
Of course, when we're bouncing, it means that there are rocks beneath us, and that's always exciting for a geologist. Here we go. Look at this place.
So you just let me know when you want me to stop.
I think as far up as we can get.
Okay.
Oh, exciting little spot ahead of us. Yeah, let's just keep on a little bit further. Ah, fantastic.
Oh, bouncy bounce. Where do you need the camera to point?
Yeah, it'll. If the camera can come with us up to those rocks, that'd be pretty cool.
It's not going to be all the way
can't
up.
get
I'll
there.
try to get there.
Okay.
1 second.
So,
Let me get.
then we'll stop here.
I can get a bit higher.
Yeah. Can the camera move?
It can go how many meters? 5 meters or so.
5 meters.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello Liz, welcome. Hello Regula. Hello Rosemarie.
So here on this rocky ridge, we've got primarily the basement rocks that I was talking about, and those are granites and gneisses, which are altered granites. And then the way that those rocks were formed to develop that first early continent, we had, so the Earth's crust is quite thick, and you get blobs of granite actually coming up from deep down in the Earth's crust, many kilometers or miles down, and coming up slowly to the surface. And as they come up, they bump into other kinds of rocks. They pick up some other kinds of rocks that are deep, deep down. in the crust. And some of those rocks are from a different kind of a place. They're from when the oceans, the crust below the oceans was being formed. And so we find some of those little pieces. In a place like this, we've got granite, and mainly the key ingredients of granite that are two minerals called quartz and feldspar. Now quartz is quite hard, so it tends to stay in the landscape longer. So you get a ridge like this, which is resistant. So what's really good to remember is that above us used to be many, many kilometers and miles of rock. And that rock is all gone into the ocean, which is that way. And rivers over incredibly long time periods have been very, very high, very, very low. And we know that the climates have been different here. So this material that was above us has all been washed away into the ocean. And now where's it going to go? Is the ocean going to fill up with sand and eventually get shallow and disappear? Not in this case, because that material that's being washed off of southern Africa is going onto the part of the plate that is under the ocean, and that is on its way to go underneath another plate or to perhaps be diverted. And so what happens usually when plates are full up with sediment and they're heading towards another plate, they're going to go down underneath, and everything that was on top of that plate is going to be melted deep down and then come up again as a volcano somewhere. But back to where we are, let's take a closer look at an actual chunk of rock. So this is a little piece of quartz, and you've probably got some quartz in your house if you have windows or glasses, and even this camera lens that I'm seeing you through is made primarily out of this material. It's very hard and there's loads of it. It's one of the commonest minerals that we find on the Earth's surface. And then here, this creamy stuff is another mineral that we find in granite. It's called feldspar. Let's take a little stroll up this way. Do you think we can get up?
We're going to try it. We will find out shortly.
Okay. I'm going to nip up there so long.
Okay. Don't fall over, Basil. Andrew, just keep me updated whether we lose picture. Basil, you hear that?
Yeah. So just up here, this particular piece of rock is a very unusual kind of a granite gneiss. It's been in an explosion, and I want to show you the place that tells me that story. So just here, we've got some chunks of rock that have got clear, sharp edges. I don't know if you can see that. What that means is that at some stage, this whole section of rock was broken up quite violently, probably through a process that we call faulting, where enormous chunks of rock move against each other. This is deep, deep, deep below the surface. Enormous forces are exerted when you get that kind of movement, and the rocks are crushed and shatter. And then in between those rocks moves dissolved minerals that fills the spaces. So just here, these little clear, well, not clear, but white patches are a mineral called quartz, which filled all the gaps between the shattered rock and solidified in place and made a new rock. So we've got a word for this. It's a breccia. So this is a granitic rock or granitic gneiss, and then it's become a breccia because of that breaking up process. That tells a story of real violence long ago in the Earth's history. Let's head on back.
We have a friend of Painted Dog, Alex, who's an archaeologist, who says, "Hello, John, rock on."
Thanks very much.
Okay, give it to Joe. Okay, I'll just give Basil a second to reattach everything.
So Alex, one of the things that really stands out for me in terms of archaeology is the way that some of the rocks in this area really favor being made into stone tools. So it always makes me think that the geology of a place actually kind of determines how long people can live there in terms of our, you know, our long history as humans emerging in landscapes like this. And so if you can make great tools out of sharp stones, you can live longer and have more children. So I think we may well have emerged in landscapes like this, near places where there's great rocks for making tools.
Yeah, you guys ready there yet? Andrea says, "Good morning, loving this geology lesson." Jennifer says, "I think I'll be looking at rocks differently now when I'm walking with or hiking with my dogs." Okay, you guys ready?
Yeah, Jennifer, I find that every rock's actually got a story.
So you're
really helpful to know where they come from.
Sunsplit.
Yeah.
Reverse through the rocks.
I've just spotted something.
Okay.
Hang on. This is cool. So remember I was saying that here's the Earth's crust. Here is a blob of granite rising slowly up towards the surface. This is very, very long ago. And as it rises, it picks up other kinds of rocks that happen to be in its path as it blobs its way slowly upwards. And some of those rocks that it picked up are very different in color. So we know that they're not granite. And some of them are just here in front of us.
Can we go forward or?
No, it's close.
Those are going to go closer. I don't know, we can pick
Just
it up.
checking that there were no scorpions there. So this is a piece of greenstone. And this was a piece of early ocean crust from when the Earth was much hotter. And so it would have been a kind of a basalt, a dark rock that formed the ocean floor, the early ocean floor. That whole section of plate will have gone underneath another plate, and it would have been partially melted, but there would have been these rocks down there that got changed by heat and pressure into still greenish dark, and the minerals get altered by that heat and pressure. It keeps some of the shape and original structure from what it used to be long, long ago. And they stand out in the landscape. And they've often got a kind of, they've got an angle to them. So they stick out. They were rafted in this little, how could you call it? Like a little island of a different kind of rock. Hitchhikers, beautiful. Hitchhiking towards the surface. And these ones were caught hitchhiking with their fingers pointing to the sky.
Mary says, "I've always been fascinated by how our landscapes are formed with big geological processes of the Earth." And Alex has now said he agrees with you completely. It means we've got to find a stone tool.
Alex, the game is on.
I found a few here.
Yeah?
Not as many as I found in other places. I think you were up in Salati. I found lots in Salati when we've been doing actually wild dog work up there. I know Dad's found some big hand axes.
Yeah, he showed me them.
Yeah, so it's an early Stone Age. I have found some middle to late Stone Age, but over that side of the reserve. Okay. Now we do get, and for a lot of people who, a lot of our viewers have been to this part of the world, and as we go a little bit further to to the north of us, we get quite a lot of mica and even some vermiculite, I think. And I mean, I always found that quite amazing. So when I was young, working up in Zambia, we used to do egg collection for crocodiles. But we used to pack all their eggs in vermiculite.
Beautiful insulator.
Yeah, and also it was so soft. It was a rock, but it was almost weightless, so to speak, like almost, yeah, which I always found amazing. And then mica, what do they actually use mica for? Is it used in a lot of different things?
All sorts of things. You've probably got some mica in your house.
Okay.
So paint, for example. So here in South Africa, we have a big a chain of hardware stores called Mica Hardware, and that's going to be named after the fact that there's mica in the paint, which makes it hard and more resistant to weathering.
We have found there are a few little spots of mica I think I've seen here.
Yeah. So I mentioned quartz and feldspar as two significant minerals that we find. A third one is mica. It's a big ingredient of granite.
Okay, so we're going to go down into the Sunsplit River, and as John was saying a bit earlier, the rivers often give us quite a nice picture because it's cutting through the surface, so we can see the different layers of what's happening.
So this gives us a great view of the mountains, and you can see in front of us there's a place where it goes down quite significantly, and that's because there's a really big river called the Olifants. No prizes for guessing what that's named after, elephants. And that river has cut through that area over incredibly long periods of time, removing material as it goes. And so that Olifants River has a catchment area behind these mountains, quite a large catchment area. So we could expect that rocks from maybe 40, 50 miles away might find their way here along that river.
I just turned down, I didn't hear which mic. Regula says her boys Felix and Cedric love geology almost as they love animals, so they're very excited.
Fantastic,
for
guys.
the drive.
Fantastic. Glad to have you with us.
All right, so apparently it was one of their big science subjects for the last school year, so they're very excited to be brushing up on their geology.
Brilliant.
Okay, so we're heading into the Sunsplit. You said you want to go to the rhino rubbing post outside or down the riverbed?
If you can find one in the riverbed, that's great.
We'll find another one further down.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
There's quite a few around here.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to go into the Sunsplit River. Just want to make sure. See if our friend the Kudu Krip leopard has been around. She likes this area a lot.
Just to say, as we start going in, we're not only tracking animals as we go, we're tracking rocks. So rocks can tell us a bit of a story about their journey because of how rounded or smooth or jagged they happen to be. So look at this thing. That didn't travel very far before it ended up here. And this is a big old chunk of, something in the granite nice department. Mainly quartz, so quite resistant. And then a few little bits of feldspar tucked in between. But there's a really cool stripy rock that I want to show you.
There we go.
This is a beaut. Okay, so I spoke about the greenstones being hitchhikers. Oh man, I'm going to use this term all the time now. Thanks, Brent. The greenstones they've been around a really long time, some of the oldest rocks in the world, and so they've been changed a lot by all kinds of heat and pressure and hot fluids traveling through them and altering them. So this here has got a mixture of some of the minerals we find in the granite and granite gneisses, and some of the minerals that have got their origin as greenstones. So I'll just give you a word here. You probably know this word, metamorphic. Those are the rocks that have been changed by heat and pressure. So this is metamorphic rock. And this banding is because these minerals, so deep down in the earth, you've got like a magma chamber. These rocks are soft and being squashed around. I don't know if any of you use a toothpaste that's got stripes in it, but it's a similar kind of consistency where you've got this red hot toothpaste mixture sort of bubbling away and squishing, and certain colors are representing certain minerals that separate out at different temperatures deep down in this vast magma chamber. And so we get these beautiful striping. The pale minerals are going to be quartzes and feldspars, which are light in color. This dark mineral is called hornblende. And then cutting through it, so happening later, is a thin vein of another mineral. I don't know if you can see this green vein running through. Does it? Yeah, we can't see it easily on the other side, but that's quite nice and clear. And that's a mineral that turns up when there's been alteration by these hot fluids carrying minerals with them. So certain kinds of feldspar get altered into this green mineral. It's called epidote.
Very cool. So we're going to be spending quite a bit of time cruising the Sunslert River today, and John is just going to tell me when to stop.
I'll do that with happiness and delight.
Whenever you see something interesting.
So I just want to talk a little bit about sandy rivers and why they're great places to go rambling when you're looking for rocks. Because when the river flows, it's often quite a powerful event. Oh, we're going to stop here. And
you want to?
I want to have a look at that one. Oh, excellent.
The car.
Thanks.
So it's easier for Basil.
Great, thank you.
Happy, Basil?
So I was talking about rivers being, the sand in a river being quite a significant force. It's like liquid sandpaper. So this sand is made primarily of grains of quartz, and there's some big ones, there's many small ones, there's a few little bits of feldspar, but they're going to decompose quite quickly. So this is quite hard, and it's grindy. So when the river comes down in flood, we have a rush of liquid sandpaper washing over these rocks and polishing them, if you like. So this here is a form of granite, but it was close enough to some of those greenstone minerals that it's changed its color a bit. And just over here, it's a little bit of granite that's been stained by some of the greenstone minerals that have probably dissolved, gone into solution, and kind of squeezed their way in between the grains of the granite. And remember, this was happening, you know, it could have been 20 kilometers below the surface, and it's really hot and pressurized down there. Very different conditions to what we have up here. So in those conditions, rock can liquefy, minerals can dissolve and go into solution, and they can travel through rock. Can you believe it? A mineral dissolved in solution, traveling through a rock, changing the rock as it goes, getting deposited in different kinds of places. So again, this idea that rocks are soft and plastic at a grand scale and changing all the time.
So Ariana's got a question for you there. She says, is there a definite way to date a rock in the field?
So Ariana, excellent, thank you for asking that, because how old these things are really is a big part of the story. What matters for me most is not what does the rock look like, but where is the rock. So I know from looking at geological maps that this particular formation is one of the oldest formations in the world, this basement. And so geologists have studied stratification, so the way that rocks are layered, the way that one type of rock is above another, where do you find fossils, where don't you find fossils. And then certain kinds of places in the world, you can pick up certain kinds of minerals that can be dated so zircon crystals, and uranium decays to lead at a particular rate, and you find those elements in zircon crystals. And so if you find a zircon crystal in a particular rock formation, you can find out how old it is by the speed at which the uranium has decayed to lead. So how much lead is there in comparison to the uranium still remaining. So date that, find those dates for certain rocks in a particular formation, and then you can follow that formation using a geological map and know that that whole formation is going to be roughly that age. That's an answer. I hope that is helpful.
How old are these rocks we're looking at here?
Yeah, so I like to do this in a couple of different ways. So let's say this distance between my hands is the age of the Earth, so about 46 centimeters. And this is our current understanding. Good science is always saying, how can we learn more? How can we get more accurate? How can we figure things out even better? So currently our understanding, that's 46 centimeters. Inside my fingernail is all of our journey as humanity, the time that we separated from the great apes, all of the emergence of the various directions that sentient humans have gone in until we eventually got here. That's all in this last sort of millimeter of my fingernail at 46 centimeters. So your question was, how old are these rocks? They're about here, Brent. Okay. So if we're going to put an age to it, it's around about 3.2 billion years old. Okay. So this basement really has been sitting here for a long time. It was covered for a long part of its journey through time, and it's been uncovered recently.
Awesome. Betty's just saying this is an interesting, different approach to our usual drives. I'm getting a good education. Most geologists we know from Houston have a very different approach to what they study. And then Jennifer, of all the continents, does Africa have the most diverse types of rocks and minerals, or somewhere else in the world?
Yeah, Jennifer, excellent. I'm getting great questions this afternoon, thank you. Every continent has a great diversity of rocks. Africa has an unusual diversity because a lot of it's really old, so there's been time for all kinds of sediments to accumulate here, for those sediments to be changed, for various different kinds of volcanoes to spew different things out onto the surface. But I think in every continent you're going to find a significant range of interesting rocks.
Which continent's got the oldest rocks in the world? It is...
Yeah, so Western Australia has some unbelievably old rocks, directly related to the ones that we're seeing here actually. And then Greenland also has some unbelievably old rocks.
Okay. Canadian would like to know, how deep do you have to go before it's too hot for people to work?
Oh, well done. So miners, let's just go a little bit forward, because this is a different kind of rock we've just bumped into. Yeah. In fact, right next to the tree will be a good place for us to take a close look. So mining, I think as little as 100 meters.
Depending
maybe a bit
where.
more, maybe a bit less, depending where, depending on what type of rock it is. But yeah, it gets pretty stuffy and hot down there.
I mean, we've got some of the deepest mines in the world.
Yeah,
which
we
are
do.
3 kilometers.
Yeah. So you'll I think find significant temperature change at depths lower than 100 meters below the surface. But I think by the time you're getting down to a kilometer or two, it's going to be really challenging to work down there. So I mean, the center of the Earth is a giant thermonuclear reactor that's pushing out this energy all the time, and yeah, we feel it. So I spotted this. It's a feature in the landscape. If you could just, let's look this way. Some dark rocks. Oh, thanks very much.
No worries.
It's very useful to having your own driver to move the camera around. There we go. So the reason why we took a little detour out of the riverbed is because there's something that even the trusty Suzuki Jimny, which can go in most places, couldn't get over, and that's a kind of wall of this dark rock. Quite a rounded sort of structure, and then blocky. So let's go and have a closer look at some of these things on this side. Yeah, this is great. So what we've got here is a different kind of rock, and it's quite a bit younger than our granite gneiss basement. So I'm going to paint a little bit of a picture for you. Here's the granite gneiss basement. Here's some of those sedimentary layers sitting on top of it. Here's the age of the earth, roughly. So the original granite gneiss basement formed about here, so about 1.1 billion. There's an event. We've got our basement, and remember that the earth is dynamic. There's movement, there's heat, there's hot, wet, pressurized liquid rock below us, and it needs to go somewhere. So when the conditions are right, that hot magma is going to make its way to the surface, and that granite gneiss basement got a push from underneath, and up comes the magma, forcing its way where it can through the basement. And so you would have had these jets of liquid rock. It's a dark rock in this case, and it's heading towards the surface, and that surface has long been eroded. But when the pressure slowed down, whatever was left on its passage through the basement remained. So we find these, they're called dike. So these are dykes. A vertical sort of push of rock that you find in an environment like this is a dike. And areas where there's lots and lots of these dikes coming through we call a dike swarm. So this is a dike swarm, and the rock is called Dolerite or diabase. In North America it's referred to as diabase in many, many books, but it's the same sort of material. What's interesting is that it's on a journey. So it's got three different names depending on where you find it in the journey. If you find it from down here, where it cooled quite slowly in the magma chamber, that's a rock called gabbro. If you find it here, where it cooled relatively quickly, but not super quickly, we call it dolerite or diabase. And if you find it poured out onto the surface, we call it basalt. And that's the stuff that's emerging on the ocean floor now. It's the stuff that comes out of a lot of volcanoes, very high in iron and magnesium. What it does in this landscape is it's more resistant than the granite, so it stands out. And it's got a blocky structure. Now, if you're a tree and you live in a place like this, things can be harsh. Fires come through, animals want to eat you, animals want to eat your bark. It can dry out for many, many months at a time. But a place like this is a little haven because the cracks mean water can sit down underneath the rocks for longer. So the trees can stay hydrated, if you like, for longer. The roots are protected. The branches are protected. Porcupines love to come and chew at the base of certain plants. They'll find it a bit harder here. Elephants might struggle to come and push this over. They might not be able to walk up here. So just because of a slightly different type of rock, we get a different type of habitat. That means we're then going to get a host of birds that love to come and visit this particular tree, this weeping boerbeen, they're called. Boerbeen is boer is a farmer in Afrikaans. So these trees have a host of beautiful red flowers in September. I'm starting to look for them now because the season is changing. And sunbirds, a bit like the North American hummingbirds, nectar drinkers, they love to visit these trees. So all because of the geology, we might get a beautiful sunbird here in a month's time.
And then this particular dolomitic dike here, Dolerite, sorry, is has been home to a few sets of leopard cubs. So Mom's left them in this, and they continue on for a while, but she's used these rocks as a den for the little leopards. Kudu Krip, our most commonly seen female, she was brought up in these rocks.
Yeah, leopards know a good thing when they see it, huh?
Yeah. I remember the first time I ever saw the cubs was on that rock under the tree.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you, Dolerite. So going into a place where there's been quite a lot of erosion, kind of cutting away of these loose soils. We're not entirely sure why particular places cut away and wear away more than others, but it often has to do with the roots of the plants that are growing in the topsoil of an area. And if those roots are compromised, if the plants are compromised for whatever reason, could be overgrazing by cattle, because there were cattle in this region quite some time back, then the soils get compromised and they can wash away in these powerful rains which we get here.
Brown hyena tracks.
Oh, fantastic. The rivers are a bit like they're a bit like highways, easy to travel for animals, easy for predators to see things that they want to eat. So there's always good action along a river.
Black rhino has been around here quite a bit. One of the bulls in this area often likes to have a snooze in the riverbed.
Huh.
Particularly on a windy day like this, there's a good chance we might see either black or white rhino in the riverbed trying to avoid the wind.
So what you'll find is that the sand in places like this will keep the heat. And so it can be windy and quite cold, and yet down in the riverbed it's fairly still. The sand's been absorbing the heat of the day, and so animals come to lie on it, and they'll enjoy that warmth that will carry through most of the night at a higher temperature than the surrounding air.
Betty says, are coal mines the deepest? No, I think the deepest is gold. The deepest mines in the world are gold mines.
I believe so.
Diamonds are generally not the deepest mines, strangely enough, and that's actually the next question, which was Mary. You can't talk about rocks and minerals in Africa without talking about diamonds.
Excellent. Mary, I haven't spotted any diamonds today, but I will let you know if I see one. The diamonds are brought up from deep below, in fact below the crust, from that place that we call the mantle, and enormous pressure down there, and then we get these events that have happened at various times in history where you'll get it's like a volcanic blast coming up from the mantle, and this could be over 100 kilometers below surface, and up comes this mixture of minerals from the mantle carrying diamonds with it, blasting its way through a whole range of different kinds of rocks above it, and the mixture will blurt out onto the surface, and then that whole event gets solidified in time. Let's remove a few miles of that surface, but what we still get left with is the place where that volcanic pipe, if you like, came through. And very often it's a kind of mineral mixture that we call kimberlite, and a geologist will spot that kimberlite pipe, sometimes from the air, sometimes from walking in an area, and sometimes from checking rivers that are below where the drainage that flows over that kimberlite pipe exposure, where the rivers that flow below that place, and the diamonds end up in those places, and obviously diamonds, because they're so hard, stay in the landscape the longest. We're spotting a kingfisher.
Yeah, kingfisher.
Yeah, so I'm sure Brent has mentioned this in previous drives, but a lot of our kingfishers in Africa don't eat fish, they eat insects, and you often find them in dry places far from water.
Ulla says, John's way of sharing his great knowledge is absolutely fascinating and inspirational. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that.
So Mary says, you hear about plants protecting topsoil, you don't really think about how plants are protecting the rock base as well.
very good point, because once the topsoil's gone, then the rocks are exposed, and they can start to weather more easily.
Okay. You got your map, and I can just have a quick look how far it is down the Sunset, whether it's going to be faster to pop out or just keep going all the way down the river. I think you went all the way down the river with Dad.
We did.
Okay, so you'll stick to the river. Because you want to get to that particular spot.
We found some interesting places not too much further down from here.
Ah, perfect.
And some lively driving, which will put your skills to the test.
Oh, don't worry, I taught Dad how to drive.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
okay.
right.
Okay.
He'd get quite upset if I heard that. He is one of the ones.
Are you listening, Kevin?
He taught me how to drive, particularly off-road. Got the Kevin Leo Smith crash course in off-road driving, chasing wild dogs in Botswana. Oh, dyke disappearing there. Oh, that lions must have killed an Inyala.
Ah, look at that.
No, I didn't notice all that.
Okay, so
Male Inyala with that white and black.
Lovely. You just tell me where we are now.
Where were we? So we're in this middle section here
Yeah.
somewhere.
So there's a section where we don't see many rocks.
And then we're going to hit rocks after the next.
Not many big rocks, but
Yeah.
of course we are traveling over many tiny ones.
Yes. So we're just going to go through Sandkamp.
If there are any geologists who've been tuning into what we're doing this afternoon, our basement here is, these are Archean rocks, the granites and gneisses from the Archean period.
Up on the Inyala, we saw a retired one, the lion snacked on, just back there. But I think the oldest, and monkeys as well. The oldest rocks in South Africa are up on the high fault near Barberton.
Yes.
Or what's it?
Yes.
And they,
yeah.
I've forgotten how old
well,
they
it
are
is
now.
about 3.5 billion.
Okay.
The very oldest rocks in southern Africa that we know of are found in Swaziland, just across the border. They're granite gneiss rocks that have been dated to, I think, 3.6 billion.
Okay, wow.
These really are ridiculous timescales.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter if you can't grasp it, but to me it's beautiful to think about maybe an incredibly deep well, and you've lowered a bucket to 100 meters or 100 yards below the surface, and it's down at the bottom of the well, and you're slowly pulling that bucket up. And as it comes, you're passing these different events on your journey to the present time.
Now
So something we're noticing here is the soils. As we drive along slowly, we're starting to see some quite dark grey soils, and that means they've got a high clay content. And so clay, the particles are tiny, and they get transported to lower places in a landscape and settle out near rivers, and then deposited for a few hundred years, and then enormous floods cut away the soils again. So these are very dynamic environments. With the Can you tell us more about that, Brent?
we're just having some breakup here. I'm just going to go through this closed section quickly. I'm just going to speed up. Strange enough, when it comes to doing live from the middle of the bush, it's easier to send a signal through a rock than it is through a leaf because of the water.
Ah, fascinating.
How are we looking, Andrew? Okay, there we go. Okay, we're back.
Oh, fantastic. So just tell us a bit more about a relationship between a nyala, there's one,
There's lots of nyala.
and monkeys.
Well, monkeys in general with a lot of different species, it's not really on purpose, because the monkeys have an advantage being up in the trees. They often spot predators a lot sooner than the animals on the ground. And also, with certain fruiting trees, the monkeys are messy eaters and they'll drop food. So nyala and bushbuck, in particular with monkeys and baboons, you can quite often find them together, and even impala, being the great generalists that they are. Okay, I think we are getting to the next rocky section shortly. Oh no, naughty elephants. Hold on.
So down in the riverbed, more water for longer, we find bigger trees.
The Ellies have had a good time here, pushing down trees. I actually haven't been down this riverbed, this deep down this riverbed in a while. Regula says, John, your geology lesson is a great example of how living and non-living things depend on each other, and everything has its purpose. Nothing in nature is futile, whether it be living or non.
Oh, I think that's a great way of thinking about it. I really love to look at the way things are connected, and I like to look at nature as one massive interconnected puzzle, if you like. It's full of different parts, some of them more closely woven together than others, but everything is affecting every other part. Beautiful canopy of one of those weeping bull trees that just went under.
That's actually interesting. So that's aardvark digging for water. So we get it quite often here. It's a bit too dry now, but we find spots where the aardvark have often dug up for water and they drink, and then the jets and civets and other stuff will drink out of it as well. There we go.
Ah, so why do rivers turn corners? Because they hit something resistant. So just on this edge, we hit some granite. It's more resistant than the other rock around it, and the river change course. Where the trees are going to change with where the so the geology has directed the course of this system for incredibly long time. Oh, a leg.
No, it's a stomach content. I know, look, it's all stomach content. There's a fresh kill here. I'm going to see who it was. Didn't see any lion tracks. Also, it could have been killed somewhere else, and then the hyenas have taken it for a ride. So another Inyala. Another big male Inyala. It's not as fresh as I thought it was. Probably a day or two. And it got killed over here. I can see all the blood. Looks like it was a leopard, and the hyenas come and stolen it. Or the leopards abandoned what was left and the hyenas took it. A leopard kill and a lion kill down the riverbed.
Behind you.
Let's put this on the sightings group.
Come in, Sammy. I'm going to move slightly forward where I am now. You'll see it.
We have got some keep a lookout. We might have a fat cat somewhere around here.
Kevin, I haven't heard from you today. Okay, no problem, sir.
Okay, let's get around the corner. The lost picture. We're back. So in these deep drainage lines, we're going to have a bit of breakup. It should get a bit better now as we get out towards the more open skies.
So this really perfect example is harder than other rock near it. So, there's a place where something's been digging for water. Okay, so here's our granite gneiss basement, nicely exposed again. And this we'd call gneissic. So the ingredients of granite, but they've really been strongly metamorphosed. They've been changed by heat and pressure. And we can see the minerals that make up the gneiss quite well here. So there's a pinkish kind of substance here. That's a feldspar. And then we get a creamy feldspar. And then tucked in here, dotted about, are little bits of more clear quartz. And then here, this really is a highlight of this particular spot. I spoke about a little green mineral called epidote that turns up in these places where there's been alteration along a vein. So these are veins where primarily quartz has traveled, where there's been a weakness in the rock. Again, remember this is happening kilometers or miles below the surface. And then a bit of alteration of feldspar, and we get epidote turning up, this beautiful green epidote. So there's a rock that's sold commercially called unakite, and that's from places in rocks like this, this granitic gneiss, where the epidote and the pink feldspar have mixed together really beautifully. So keep a lookout for unakite the next time you're in a shop that sells that kind of thing. So because of the high quartz content, more resistant, and so that has to do a little turn.
And here it does quite a spectacular one to find its way. This is not the worst one is still coming for driving purposes.
But perhaps the best for rock doing purposes. So something significant. We're going to be taking a closer look at these rounded rocks.
Which one in particular?
Well, that one's sort of round and flaky.
Oops.
So I spoke earlier and we looked at that place where the leopard cubs were seen by Brent some years ago, and that was Dolerite, or diabase, that rock that intruded the granites. So here we've got some exposed and polished in the riverbed. This is a great example, and it's darker than the granite, it's finer grained than the granite, and when I say finer grained, I'm talking about crystal size. So here's a piece. Oh, hello. We call these flatties. This is a spider that, it's a really fast mover. I don't want to disturb it. Oh, there we go. It's just climbed off. So they catch their prey by just sitting and waiting, and then, there it is. they'll sit and wait. They don't spin a web to catch their prey. They rely on speed and camouflage and will seize on some insect that lands on here. And they can grab big insects because they move so fast. So here's a little chunk of dolerite. It's been trundling down the river for a bit. And we can't really see individual crystals in here. It cooled too fast, and so the crystals didn't have time to form. Yeah, little guy, you might be able to find your rock again. So dolerite tends to break up in these, we call it onion skin weathering, because if you think about an onion and its layers in those circles, the way that water and oxygen kind of penetrate into a big lump of dolerite tends to happen in these circular formations, and it peels off layers of dolerite in a skin. And then just further down the stream here, we've got beautiful polished dolerite boulders that get washed every single year by the liquid sandpaper of this river. So dolerite soils, we can just, let's take a look up here. The soils go a kind of greyish green colour when they derive directly from the dolerite, quite different to the sandy soil. A little
bit Basil, like right in front here to the right.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the dolerite in the landscape. Here's some of the soil derived from the dolerite. You can see it's a very different colour to that sand that I picked up earlier. Yeah, here's some of it kind of weathering away. So the process of soil formation is happening right here in my hand. What an amazing thought. So here's rock decomposing. I'm making some soil, just sort of speeding the thing up by about 10,000 years. And this stuff's full of iron. So can you see the reddish look here? And there's a lot of magnesium in here as well. And so we get these dark soils, clayey soils, because of the way the minerals in the dolerite break down. And then they leave them enough time and they become quite reddish soils with very, very fine clay particles. But this is how they tend to start.
So Jennifer wants to know, is there anywhere in the world that you wish to explore that you haven't, or spend more time in? A big question.
All right, Jennifer. Let's just do another whole drive where I would reel off names of places for about 3 hours. Yeah, I'd love to go to Australia, walk in the outback. I'd love to spend some time in the Amazon. Venezuela is very appealing. There's some extraordinary places there. A place with the most lightning strikes in the world.
Venezuela?
Yeah, there's this huge lake, and it's some kind of climatic feature there that, yeah, there's storms all the time. Yeah, I love rocks. I don't just love rocks though. I love biodiversity. I love geodiversity. And so, yeah, if I had an opportunity, maybe Costa Rica would be high up there with the extraordinary biodiversity. And then I'd want to get across to the Andes. Gosh, I love wild places, really. Yeah, never boring.
I think you and Dad were the last people to drive down here.
Yeah, very likely. If I remember rightly, there's a lively section of road coming up.
Around the corner. Yeah, and this one's also quite lively in our little car. It's not quite as high as the Land Rover.
Just noticing up on our left that dolerite, remembering that the dolerite is harder than the surrounding granite. So we've got a little resistant kind of, what we call in South Africa, koppie. It means a small head. And what we're driving through now in the riverbed are the dolerite boulders, which have been rounded by the rain and the river. The vehicle's making some unusual noises. So there's spectacular examples on that opposite bank of the way that dolerite weathers.
got worse since the last time I was here. There we go.
Oh, beautifully done. Well done.
There's still another fun spot coming. But that's the worst, I think.
That was really well navigated. So we've moved out of the Dolerite back into granite. I hope you're starting to notice the difference now. The way that the rocks stick out in the landscape is very different.
Mate, it says Lightning Lake is high on my bucket list. I want to spend a month there.
Wow. Yeah, wouldn't that be a treat?
And then Jennifer says, we'll just have to bring you back for another drive. You can tell us all the places you want to go.
Yeah.
Regula says they've got friends who've been to Lightning Lake. Though unfortunately, poor Venezuela is not doing so well at the moment.
Yeah.
Politically. One of our dear friends is actually from Venezuela. And yeah, her folks are stuck there at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, we had friends who lived in Venezuela for a couple of years as teachers. And yeah, just a simple act of doing something like getting hold of petrol or gas could take a few days and might involve dodging somebody wielding a shotgun and that kind of adventure.
It's crazy at the moment. Okay, we might have a little bit of break up again. We're going into some thick areas.
But before we do, please reverse slightly because there's some funny looking dolerite here that just presents differently in the river. So it stood out to me because it's not rounded like those other dolerite boulders that we saw. It's got a kind of jagged appearance. This might be one of those situations where if the camera can come with us, we'd get a closer look at the unusual way that this rock is created. It's very, very different. So it's a block of dolerite, but remember that dolerite comes from a magma chamber. And magma chambers are lively places, more lively than this drive even. A magma chamber is full of dissolved and melted minerals of different kinds. And so the magma chamber that this dolerite came from is, the mixture is quite dark, and it is a particular mix of different kinds of minerals, but they don't always stay in perfect harmony with the crystals all in exactly the same places. Sometimes, as we'll see over here, the rock kind of fractures as it's being formed, and along these lines of weakness, and there's multiple lines of weakness just here where my hand is, yeah, you can see that fascinating texture, how there's a dark mineral that stands proud of the surface. See that? And that means that it's more resistant to the continuous liquid sandpaper coming over it. And it means that the chunk of rock breaks up in blocks rather than rounding in that usual onion skin weathering pattern that we saw. So it's still dolerite, it's just been altered by the minerals moving through it in a different way. And then here, so what this flat layer represents is a vein. So if you can imagine, there was rock above this and that rock's been worn away. So this is a vein of this dark mineral carrying with it some crystals of feldspar that had crystallized out down in the magma chamber. And then when this dolerite came shooting up towards the surface, those crystals didn't have time to melt, and so they got kind of trapped in space and time in the rock here. It's a beautiful big chunk there. Got a lovely blocky solid feel. We will avoid driving over it.
Yeah, we would not. The car will not like that. Betty would like to know, what is the difference between a magma chamber and a volcano?
Okay, well, they're part of the same system, Betty. The magma chamber is deep below the surface. It could be 20 kilometers below the surface, and all that molten rock sitting inside the magma chamber will go somewhere eventually. It might stay down there and cool and solidify, but if it can find a weakness and there's enough pressure, it's going to make its way to the surface, and when it pours out onto the surface, that's a volcano.
So we do apologize, we've got a bit of breakup through here. Might not. It is quite a closed canopy in this section. The rhinos made the road a bit stickier.
So here we see the power of the river cutting away at these softer granites, because they've been underground but near the surface for a long time. So they've been softened by weathering. And then here those same granite gneisses have been polished, which gives us, I see Brent has a little adventure coming up.
Yes.
And then, but we've got a beautiful example.
I'm gonna
So,
pop in
yeah,
here
thanks,
first before
yeah.
go down the rock face.
Okay, so here's this gneiss, wonderfully exposed by the scouring power of the water. And one of the things we can notice is a kind of, we talk about foliation, where the rock's been squeezed and highly pressurized in particular directions. And so, yeah, let's take a place like this. You can see there's a bit of a line to it and a bit of a flow. That's because there would have been pressure in a certain direction. And those geologists who study these things in detail could figure out the particular direction that the rock was moving in to cause that kind of foliation. So there is a chunk of granite, or something very close to granite, that kind of got caught up in the formation process of the gneiss. I can see that it's different because it's standing proud of the stuff around it, which means it's more resistant. So quite fine-grained, which means when it was originally formed, it cooled down quite quickly. And so those finer grains bind together more effectively than the coarser grains here. And so this tends to get washed away faster by the water. This remains behind. You can see the way that different minerals in the gneiss are separated out here. So we've got the quartz and feldspar, the pale stuff, and then these darker minerals. There'll be some bits of that greenstone in here. There'll be some of a mineral called mica or biotite that's in there, and a few other things mixed in. Yeah, just further down there, as Brent will be driving us slowly down, there's this spectacular banding, but I'm not sure how bumpy the vehicle is going to be as we do it. Yeah. Yeah, this really is a beautiful spot.
Sit there now, baby.
Okay.
There we go.
Yeah, so what we've got here is, remember I was speaking about the toothpaste, the way that you have those layers in a toothpaste. So if you can imagine inside that magma chamber, you've got these partially melted minerals. Some of them have separated out because they're different, they've got different melting points. And so
Basil's going to come down and join you there.
Oh, that's very kind of you. That'll give us a closer look. So just to paint the picture of this kind of environment, we'd have this chamber of semi-liquid plasticky rock. It's, as I've said, miles and miles below the surface. There's these enormous forces, heat and pressure, that are squeezing and squashing them. And sometimes they solidify and then they crack apart, and some other mix of minerals fills the gap. So that's what's happened here. So this band formed, and then this sort of split into it, so it would have cracked apart and been filled. And so what causes the different colors? It's going to be different mixtures of minerals. The paler ones, oh, excellent. So here, this is fascinating. Okay, so I spoke about a mineral called feldspar. This is feldspar here, nicely polished, smooth. I wish you could feel this. I wish I could transport the smoothness of it through the camera. It's glorious. So this mineral feldspar mixed in with a touch of quartz, which is clear, and we've got a vein here in which these minerals crystallized out, and it's quite a big space, which means that this was filled by a solution. So we talk about hydrothermal fluids. It just means hot, wet, liquid rock dissolved. And it moves into a gap like this, and then it crystallizes. And because there's space, and because there's fluid around it, the crystals can grow quite large. So we call little veins like this pegmatites. Again, you don't have to remember these complex terms, but it might give you a handle to look up this kind of information. And so we've got a pegmatite vein running all the way through, and it changed course here. It probably changed course here because it bumped into some portion of rock that was slightly harder and had to shift. And remember, of course, this was happening at great depth. So what I find fascinating, of course, is that when a river washes over a place like this, we get flow lines of how sand abrades a stream, and then we get much, much older flow lines of how the rock itself was formed. So the same pattern of flow, but separated by 3 billion years.
Yeah. Jennifer says it's beautiful, like a painting.
Yeah, I've always thought so. I'm really attracted to rocks like this. They're just they're captivating. No end to the pattern.
Wait for Basil to come back on the car. Don't fall off now, Basil. Jump.
So those of you in California are going to perhaps have a renewed respect for Yosemite and the granites in the Sierras. Huge exposure up there, and I'm sure there's some gneiss as well. Perhaps you who live in California can let me know if there's any exposures of gneiss. Great. Driven by somebody who knows what they're doing with this vehicle.
Yeah, these little cars can go places some of the bigger cars can't as well. We've got the old one that's got special raised suspension that can go almost anywhere.
Yeah.
We have 10 years old. Rhinos have been through here again.
So my geology interest is starting to twitch as we arrive at a place where the rocks are slightly different, forming a sort of gate for us to travel through. So we've got Dolerite again, forming a bit of a wall. Let's just look at this Dolerite as we go past. No, we can carry on driving. I'm watching to see if it's any different to the other stuff we've seen. So I'm looking for the size of the grains, which tells me how quickly that Dolerite cooled. This looks fairly similar to the other stuff we've seen.
Okay, again we're going to a little spot where we've got a bit of a canopy, so apologize for any breakup, but we'll be through it quite quickly. Mary says, I can stare at a face for ages. No human enhancements needed.
Yeah, very eloquently put.
Jeff says, Yosemite is awe-inspiring. Yeah, just get through. We got bad signal here. Speed up a bit. Are we looking, Andrew?
Key spot coming up. If we can stop here and there's good signal. Really important place.
Okay, we've got an important spot. Right.
Well, yeah, slightly further. Yeah, this shows it well. Okay, so to my right, we've got our dark dolerite or diabase. You're, I'm sure, starting to recognize it now. Yeah, there's a little piece of it, quite finely polished, can't really make out any crystals in there. Remember I said that the dolerite intruded the granite. So obviously there's got to be a place where you find granite and dolerite next to each other, and this is that place. So in geological terms we speak about the contact. Here's the dolerite, here's the dolerite, here's the granite. And maybe if we could just get the camera here, is it possible? There's a really key feature which we're noticing at the contact. So granite, large grains, crumbly, quite bitty, breaks up easily. The dolerite in this case very hard and forming a nice resistant feature, which again makes the river turn a corner. But then I want to show you something really cool. So here's the sort of standard dolerite, and then over here, just here, can you see that it just is shaped slightly differently? It's the way that it cooled right next to the granite meant crystalline structure and the makeup of it at a molecular level is different, and it's more blocky. And so this place right on the edge we call the chill margin. So there's the granite, there's the dolerite, that's the chill margin. Now I've got to say this, and maybe we can patent it, maybe someone's done it already, but if I'm going to open a jazz club ever, it's going to be called the chill margin. One of the other things that we find in places like this is that we start to pick up other kinds of rocks that have trundled their way down the river. And you'll remember that we started this afternoon looking at those magnificent mountains. We're going to start finding rocks that have traveled down from the mountains and then stopped in place. And they've, in some cases, been traveling for a really long time. So keep your eyes open for blocks of sandstone. There's a rock called quartzite, which is a kind of superheated sandstone. We might be seeing some of those.
So Betty's asking, are these rivers ancient and ran deep, etc. a long time ago? They seem to get very little water these days.
Yeah, ancient is quite a relative term.
Yeah.
A river course like this might be several thousand years old. If you look at this surface from the air on Google Earth, you can see old river channels which have changed. Maybe a few hundred years ago there was a big flood, a whole lot of sand got deposited somewhere and some rocks got washed out, and so the river had to change its course. So yeah, geologically speaking, these are recent environments, I suppose, but from a human lifetime perspective, the river is pretty ancient, older than me, and I'm not that old, I don't think.
But the rivers in this part of South Africa, Betty, and like where you were on safari recently, these sand rivers, they don't flow all year round, so they'll quite often flash flood and they'll flow they'll rage for a day or two at the most, sometimes even just a few short hours, and then the water subsides. They don't flow throughout the year. So we do have our major rivers in this area, the Olifants and the Blyder, and the Letaba, that flow all through the year, but most of these small beds will flow very infrequently, maybe once or twice a year.
But when they flow, it's a powerful event.
You want to look up? Or?
Yeah, just a lovely example of that vein traveling through the gneiss. Yeah, I'm gonna walk out that way. Will the mic cover that distance?
No problem.
Great. Okay. So this is really quite beautiful. It looks like the rock's got smallpox. Thankfully, smallpox is not something we need to worry about anymore. So a granitic gneiss once again, and then for some reason these are more resistant, and they've got this circular form. I don't quite know why they've got that circular look about them, but it's going to be something to do with the way they were melting and forming in their magma chamber, I would think. Could have been something more recent where certain chemicals traveled through the rock and made these little lumps harder, but I suspect it happened long ago. And then a nice vein of that quartz and feldspar mixture, quite fine and therefore more resistant. And then places like this can give us homes. So just tucked in the back there is a place where it looks like something's been digging, because this stuff, this rock becomes very crumbly, and so a lot of animals will use places like this as homes.
Betty's asking, she said, I always thought of granite as being really, really hard.
Yeah, it is. Betty, granite is really hard, but if you have enough time and water in the right quantities and air in the right volumes and access to oxygen, the granite breaks down. And so you'll find below the surface, let's think of Yosemite, those massive sticking out places like Half Dome, they're not going to wear down anytime soon. But places where granite is buried below the surface, there's a gradual kind of eating away at the rock. Some of those minerals, like the feldspar, and actually become a mineral that we probably, nearly all of us, are so you've got some granite in your house from the feldspar, you've got some granite in your house from the quartz, and then mica. You might even have eaten some mica, because you can grind it up into these fine flakes, and it can. There's certain kinds of icing which have got glitter in them, and certain makeup. On your walls. So yeah, there's granite all of our lives. Look at this extraordinary place. So here revealed these soils, and what it's done is kind of over here at the bottom. This is the granite gneiss basement, the sort of bottom of the river. You can't dig further if you're at the river at this point, but the river's traveled over here over the last few thousand years in various ways, and it's deposited stuff as it's traveled. So here are a whole lot of rounded boulders. So an interesting way to think about rocks in a river is that you can track them in the same way that you track an animal. So let's say there's a lion making its way down this river. You can track it. You know how old the tracks are, and you've got a sense of what it was doing. So here is a lump of quartzite, And quartzite is not what we call the country rock, so the stuff I'm standing on. Quartzite has traveled on a journey from those mountains, which are that way. And it's reasonably rounded, but not completely round. So it spent several thousand years trundling in a river. And then it got deposited here and covered by layers of soil and sand that the river brought down some few thousand years ago maybe, and sort of trapped in time. And now it's been revealed again. It'll get back into the river and make its way down to the sea slowly. So all sorts of things turn up in these places. We often find stone tools revealed in banks like this.
Actually had tracking the male lions on foot, and I've had them looking down at me while I was down here. They were on top of this bank. Now, strange enough, in this area, I think particularly a little bit lower, the spotted eagle owls, where those big lumps of quartzite have fallen out, use it as a nesting site.
Oh, brilliant. So we put on our rock tracking glasses. This is a place where a whole lot of rocks have washed out of the river. Oh, let's stop here. A whole lot of rocks have been exposed by the river, should I say. And some of them are much rounder than the one we saw before. This here's a lump of sandstone, and the reason I know it's sandstone is because it's quite coarse-grained. It's actually got a kind of sandpapery feel. You can actually hear it. Yeah, does that work? Quite different to the quartzite. More rounded, it means it was in the river for longer than a boulder with sharper edges. And then, beautiful specimen here. That stuff that I showed you early on, this is just a ancient green stone, amorphosed. The stuff.
We've got to get it, yeah. Oh, bump. Oh, there we go. Which we've got to know.
Sure. Different colors, patterns, shapes. And I'm also looking for what's included in those rocks. So little mineral inclusions, just something that stands out as being different or unusual. In there, the gut. I love the way the atmosphere plays as the light shifts. Smells change as well because the cooler air tends to sink into these lower places, carrying with it the scents of the day.
next little challenging section from
lovely.
a driving point of view. Not too bad, this one though.
And once again, our lovely rounded Dolerite boulders. So yeah, hitting another Dolerite dike. You can see why they're called dike swarms. If we think about the we're driving this afternoon, we've already bumped into 3 clearly visible, and from the air, really it looks like small black insects.
And I'm trying to get, before we lose too much light, to that spot.
Yes, yes.
So I'm going to go a little bit faster for a bit.
Okay, there's a cool spot that I want to show. Of lions just around the corner.
The light worked around this area yesterday, but also a leadwood female leopard, also like this little drainage line. We've sort of crossed different leopards.
Brent, when they pinch the trees, what kind of terrain happen?
I lost the picture for a second.
Okay.
I'm just waiting for Andrew to touch with that. There's not the great signal.
Okay.
When you're stable, it's not so bad.
Oh, okay.
Oh, there we go. There goes now.
Oh, beautiful.
So they actually had to check on the sections where these big clay banks.
Wow.
Nice and safe. Difficult for other predators to get to.
So just noticing that as the river changes its direction, it drops the heavy things. So just as we're going around the corner now, you can imagine a river going down here in flood, scouring as it goes. And the leading edge, the edge furthest away from us now to the left, is going to cut away, and the edge to our right, it's behind us now, had a whole lot of larger boulders which were dropped because the river has less energy there.
Is this the spot?
It is. Plunging. We want to be as close in as we can. I'm going to climb out. It'd be great if the camera can join us. Thanks, you've been incredibly patient with me.
Grab the torch.
Yeah, that'll help us.
Okay.
Ah, superb. What have we got? Yep, lovely, nice bright light. Thank you, lead lenser.
Yes.
Okay.
We love our lead lenses.
Right. Can you see that the rocks are greenish? So I spoke earlier about these greenstone chunks that are hitchhiking their way to the surface when the granite picks them up. So this is some of that greenstone, but it looks a bit different.
No, but when we want to get closer, we might want to show little things.
So let's go back to the granite that we started at that place called Eight Cake, where there was a really great view, and we sort of made our way up the slope. And I spoke about a breccia, which is the granite had been formed by the brook. So just sitting, this is a very poetic to finish off with another kind of breccia, but a greenstone breccia in this case. And there's various places where you can event in its formation or being caught up in its hitchhiking journey to the surface. You must remember these places have got water, they've got rock, and they've got pressure and they've got heat. Now water, if you boil your average kettle, loads of steam comes off and lots of pressure gets pushed out, but there's space around it. If you heat up water that's 15 miles below the surface, there's nowhere for that pressure to go. So it's going to shatter violently. Whatever rock is around it, it's going to exploit the weakness it can and cause an explosive situation. So we find those little shattered chunks of greenstone dotted around in here. So here we go. Can you see again, the edges are sharp. There we go. And this was a smash, a breakup, an explosive situation, very small, and then it got filled by liquid quartz in solution, which went all the way around the spaces and filled them in and solidified. Another different example of that, slightly across this way behind me, and we can see this feature goes all the way across the river. Before we go back to that other breccia, I just want to show you this. So the greenstones, when they get changed enough, actually turn into something that you have probably had on your bottom. If you've ever had baby powder on your bottom or put it onto your child's bottom, then you were putting talc, because it's so soft, so smooth, barrier, a little bit mica in there, but at a tiny level you can't really make it out. But it's really, really soft. You can't do that to most rocks. So highly, highly changed and metamorphosed ancient oceanic crust ends up on babies' bottoms because it gets changed into this soft, soft substance. So we've talked about diamonds today. They're the hardest rock that you can find. So we have a hardness scale when we're thinking about this in geology. Diamond is number 10. Talc is the small. So we've encountered both of them. Maybe you have a diamond ring on your finger if you have that. Another kind of rock is so soft you can actually put it on time of a person. Excellent. Thanks for going in there. There we go.
Just keep still, guys.
The powdered stuff.
Keep still.
Okay.
Just keep still. Keep still. There's a leopard. Or a civet. No, it's civet. Sorry, I just saw you. There's a civet watching from the top of the hill.
Oh, good. Do you want me to shine there with the torch?
Yeah, you should come through. I might have to go forward. Finish there and we'll have a look.
Okay.
The civet here should be quite relaxed. I thought it was a leopard for a second.
Oh, thanks. Heart rate went up there.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, there we go. He's watching. Basil. He's looking at us. If you shine just to the left of the second scotia. Oh, he's going to run. He's up at the top. He's just moved off now. But he was a little civet watching. I just saw a spotted tail through the bush, and I was just thinking, I was actually thinking about that female leopard, and then I was like, oh, is she watching us?
Yeah.
But anyway, carry on, sorry.
Sure, no problem. No, I mean, the bush gives us many beautiful things. Okay, so we've got more of that breccia here, and this is just the most spectacular section, really. So it's the shattering that you can see very clearly, all these little chunks. They definitely had no time to be rolled anywhere and have the edges broken off them. So they're all sharp-edged little chunks that have been filled in after this violent event with quartz, dissolved quartz, and making this new lovely rock. Here's some different examples. There's actually some crystals here, some quartz crystals. The pocket enough time. Crystals. Do you need the torch? Okay. So crystals in here, quartz crystals in the pocket. So just the parts is where the quartz just take a little longer to cool down, and so it had time to form bigger crystals that we can see. And that's what I wanted to show you here. Okay.
Perfect. Bit of excitement. Unfortunately, Betty's is Dolerite.
If you had an equal-sized lump of dolerite in one hand and an equal-sized lump of granite in the other hand, you would feel the difference in weight, because those minerals are very different, much less densely packed together in the granite. So that's why those granite blobs, I don't know, Betty, if you know of these things called lava lamps, which were in the 70s. I've got one on my desk actually, where there's this slow-moving blob of material that comes up to the top. It's the same principle, this huge blob of liquid granite slowly making its way through the denser material to the surface.
Yeah, well, that is the end of our riverbed cruise for now.
That really was fantastic. Yeah.
Not quite ready to go out
Yeah,
for the
okay.
drive yet.
Yeah.
Eddie and Dolerite, it's similar to each other. It seems in a way.
Good. So, dolerite is about crystalline structure, and crystalline structure is determined by a whole range of things. So the particular minerals that a rock is made of, the temperature at which they cool, kinds of pressure that have been put on them after they were formed. And so although those two rock types are actually not closely related,
outside forward.
Yeah, it can be like that.
I never had a lava lamp, which were in the 60s. I was in. Have you got the torch?
I've got the torch, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got a question. And everyone always wants to find a fossil, but obviously you need very certain types of sort of sediment and rocks to actually form fossils and stuff.
Yeah.
And I've spent a fair bit of time in Gladysvale and which is a cradle of humankind, that area.
Yes.
And that's all the fossils are in that breccia layer, but that's quite different to the breccia we're finding here.
Okay. That acid and broken out and reformed. So in that case, and those caves kind, caves are great places for finding more about our story as people, because all sorts of things live in caves, and we can eat those things. We can live in the caves ourselves.
They can eat us.
Yeah,
some of them.
And I'm sure they did. So. And limestone makes great caves because it wears away quite easily because of water, which travels through spaces in the limestone and almost eats it away. So you'll have a limestone cave, it'll have all sorts of bits and pieces in it, and then you find that the entire cave collapses into a deeper chamber below it and shatters, and all the bones and branches, who knows what is in that cave, all gets mixed up together, and then limestone really flows beautifully, and the calcium in the limestone has a wonderful way of cementing chunks together, bones and skeletons, all sorts of bits of ancient humans and things that they ate and things that ate them, all mixed together in these limestone breccias.
So we were quite lucky in my teens. We were part of an expedition into western Botswana, into an area called Tuyaba, or used to be called Drotsky's Caves. And in some of the little outcrops that are farther away from the main cave. There's a perfect example. We slid down in this little slit. Like 3 or 4 cave falls. So we got down where the roof had just fallen in. So we got to the bottom and the most interesting thing, an artwork had fallen down one of those what was it? Is it Dolomite? Another tubes.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. And it had died at the bottom, and it was they reckoned about 100 years, 150 years old. And the limestone was busy dripping the stalactites, mites, whatever. We're dripping and covering this aardvark skeleton, and it was in the process of fossilizing.
Yeah. So the fossilization process is fascinating. At a kind of, if we're talking about plants and animals being fossilized, it almost happens at a cellular level where individual cells are being replaced by minerals that travel through the skeleton and form a very, very, because it's cell by cell, very, very accurate replica of the original.
Wow. So Betty's just asking, we had a bit of breakup when you were doing your discussion between granite and dolerite.
Yes.
About the weight and the difference. I think what was the original question? Let me just find it here. Is dolerite denser and heavier?
Betty, yeah, it definitely is. The minerals that make up dolerite are different. There's a bit of feldspar in there. Then there's another dense mineral called pyroxene, and the mix that those two make together is very dense. So I don't know if you heard me speaking about the way the blobs move up, but the granite blob is always going to make its way up through the denser mineral mix. So we speak, you might encounter these terms, we speak about felsic rocks and mafic rocks. So felsic, high in feldspar and silica, felsic, and mafic rocks, high in magnesium and iron. So Fe is the chemical symbol for iron, so mafic means these darker, denser, iron-rich rocks.
And we've got time, I think, for one more question, and that is from Jennifer. And Jennifer wants to know, are there any rocks and minerals only found in Africa and nowhere else in the world? Well, I can think of one offhand.
Yeah, well, let's hear your one.
Tanzanite.
Yeah, absolutely. Rocks and minerals are peculiar things. You know, we've got our over 100 chemical elements, and they can combine in a staggering range of different formulations, and minerals are these formulations. And so you get particular places in the world where certain conditions are met and certain minerals get formed that just don't happen elsewhere. So Tanzanite's a great example, and there are several others, minerals that just turn up in one place.
Do we have any that are endemic to South Africa or Southern Africa in particular?
Not that I can think of straight away.
Okay.
But I will tell you about one particular kind of rock that was first picked up and described here in South Africa, not far from us, in the Barberton area. It's called Komatiite. And the Komati River is a South African river that flows near Barberton, in amongst those greenstone areas that Brent was talking about earlier. And Komatiite it's a form of basalt that you can't get anymore on the surface of the Earth, because the Earth has cooled down in those 4.6 billion years that it's been around. And so the magma that comes to the surface under the ocean was at about 1600 degrees long ago. In those Archean times, sort of 3.5 billion years ago. And so it cooled differently. And it formed this rock called Komatiite. And now it forms a more standard kind of a basalt. Okay. Also has to do with the different quantities of minerals that are in that extruded rock.
Good spot for
Komatiite.
a leopard, but
Ooh.
not tonight.
Komatiite, now found in greenstone belts around the world, but first described in South Africa in 1969.
Wow. Right. John, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on this afternoon's virtual safari. We're definitely going to have to do it again sometime. I'm sure there's a few people who missed being able to ask questions. And just a reminder to everyone that the keyword for the week, and if you are a pack member and you send your keyword in to our app or on email, you get your high-res photograph for the week, which is yours to do with what you please. Print it, pop it on your wall, use it as a screensaver. But this week's keyword is claw. So claw is the keyword. But again, a big thank you to John.
Thank you very much. It's been a real privilege sharing this place with you. I look forward to being able to share other places and in a similar way. And if I can just finish off with some simple advice about staying young and enjoying the world, it's stay curious. There's always something more to discover.
And from that, it's time for us to love you and leave you. I'll see you bright and early tomorrow morning.